Hello everyone, I'm Sally and welcome to today's Atta webinar. Just a couple of reminders before we begin. If anyone has any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box on your screen. I will then field these at the end to Graham, who is our presenter today. If you miss any information, don't worry, as a recording of the webinar will be sent out to everybody afterwards. So as mentioned before, today I'm joined by Graham Simmonds, who has worked for Wilderness Safaris for almost 10 years. Graham is based in Victoria Falls and will be speaking to you today about the dry versus green season benefits when visiting Zimbabwe. Graham, over to you.
Hi everybody, and thanks for joining this webinar. I'll try and keep it as brief and factual as possible, and hopefully it'll be able to help you guys on deciding between the dry season and the green season. I will give you a little heads up that I'm going to favor the green season because there's still lots of space ahead and we believe it's great value for money in Zimbabwe. So just a reminder, if you do like this webinar, I'm Graham Simmonds working for Wilderness Safaris. If you hate it, my name is Savannah Stead. I work for Amalinda Collection. Let's go straight on to the webinar then. All right, so as mentioned, the title is Dry Season versus Green Season. And just to touch briefly on the seasons in Zimbabwe. So we experience summer rains. Our summers in the southern hemisphere are opposite, obviously, to the northern hemisphere. So usually the summer rains start in the beginning of November and they go through to April. I will touch on the word usually a little bit later on because there's some neat information that might be appealing to you. And our temperatures generally are a low of 15 Celsius all the way up to a high of 35 degrees Celsius. In those rainy seasons. Zimbabwe has a dry winter, and when we have a dry winter, that's blue sky from horizon to horizon with crisp temperatures. That's generally from June all the way through to mid of September, and we have a low of 0 Celsius in some areas to a high of 20 degrees Celsius in other areas. Zimbabwe, if you look at its topography, there are some mountainous regions, so that's where it'll get to the 0, as well as some places in Hwange National Park due to the sandy soil. But generally speaking, in the tourism hotspots of Victoria Falls, we're not going to drop below 8 degrees Celsius, so it is quite a nice temperature. Although if you ask anyone living in Vic Falls, that is way too cold for them. So October is known as the hottest and driest month in Zimbabwe, but that also boasts some of the best game viewing. Reason for this is that animals are obviously getting drawn to the last water sources in Hwange, which is the largest national park, as well as the rivers around the Mana pools and the last remaining pools over there. So just focusing on the Hwange and Mana pools areas. May is often seen as a shoulder month because the rains have gone. It's still very green, but the temperatures start to become cool and the morning's crisp again. So you pulling on fleeces and longs and then heading out on game drives or activities. And when you're coming back at 9:30, 10 o'clock, you generally bar back into shorts, open shoes and t-shirts. So just to put it visually for you, our green season or rainy season, November, December, all the way through to April, historically. Then we've got our dry season, which is June, July, August, September, and October. No chance of rain there, probably more chance of Theresa May coming back into cabinet. And then we've got a secret little box that I've thrown in here, November. So November, if a lot of the operators' prices will drop from the 1st of November going into the low season. People aren't traveling yet because they're waiting for December holidays. It's not rainy season just yet because even though I say it starts in November, that's historical, and we're finding the rains coming in December. So you've got low season rates at a time when it's generally quite dry for the first few weeks of November. So if you're looking for a bargain deal, there's generally a lot of space available in all the properties in Zimbabwe at the lowest season rates. All right, so just touching onto those dry winters with blue skies and just some pictures to show you the difference. Animals starting to come down to the water holes, and then October gets to becoming very dry when the only leftover water for the animals in Hwange National Park are the pumped water holes, which are solar and diesel pumped, or on Mana pools, the rivers. So just to touch a little bit, you'll see a map popping up soon of Hwange National Park. If you zoom in a little bit and have a closer look, you'll see lots of blue dots. Those blue dots are pumped water holes. So Hwange National Park at the turn of the century, from the 1800s to the 1900s, was designated as an area that could be good for farming and husbandry. So they sent off some people out there, and very soon they realized that the soil was bad for the farming. It's quite sandy, and there were certain diseases that the domestic animals weren't used to. And if those diseases didn't get the domestic animals, then generally the predators would. But they realized afterwards that they've got this vast area. If they protect it, it's going to be a natural resource for tourism, which was starting to shape up, and or hunting. At that stage it was 50-50, and Hwange National Park was born. However, with the onset of the settlements that started to happen, I'm going to annotate briefly on your map quickly. So this is the railway that goes all the way down here. Then you've got Hwange town, which is up here, and you've got some small villages all along the different areas. It started to stop the natural migration of animals that would have happily moved from this area north and towards the Victoria Falls area that way. So because it stopped that migration, they realized that they'd have to keep the animals there somehow. Obviously in the dry season, so June, July, August through October, there's no rain, so the pans and the rivers weren't full, the animals needed water, so they started to drill boreholes. The water table is very high in Hwange, so you don't have to drill very far, which is quite nice. And you can just drop a borehole in most areas and be able to have the privilege of water coming up. So those are all pumped boreholes there. So all the camps are open as well in the dry seasons, June through to November, which is great. Ooh, I'm going to have to undo this. Sorry, pardon me. Sorry about that. No more drawing, so we don't have to draw on Mr. B's face. Right. So yeah, back to the pumped water holes. And this is a gentleman, Mr. B, Boto, who goes out and he looks after all these water holes. The interesting thing is if no one's looking after his water holes and adding diesel or fixing the solar, depending on what they are, the elephants actually start to rip up the pipes to get to where they believe and perceive that there has been a blockage in the water system. So he goes out every day in the dry season, manages to open it. So just to tapping on it again, all the camps are open in minor pools as well as in Hwange National Park. And there's an abundance of game because the animals are concentrating around these water holes. They have to head to the water holes to drink. Animals have to drink once a day at least. If you're an elephant, you'd be happy to drink twice a day generally because the temperatures are hot. And like humans, animals can go a lot longer without food if they've got water available, so they can survive on the water. And they start to lose, sadly, their form as there's less grass and less browsing around, but they are able to survive through the harsh times through drinking the water. So you're getting herds of 600 to 1,000 buffalo coming down as well. You can spend one afternoon at a water point and see up to 400, 500 elephants, separate herds. They come down because they're in smaller herds now as they move around looking for food. And then you're obviously getting scenes like this where buffalo are losing their strength because they haven't eaten a lot, and the lions and other predators are starting to pick them off as they come down to these water holes to drink. So often it can be quite a sad affair if you are very sentimental towards animals in terms of seeing the young or the sick getting picked off. From a David Attenborough geographic type thing, it's actually good because it means diseased animals are taken out of the food chain and only the strongest genes will be passed on. And from a predator's point of view, you are happy days because you've got food on call, if that makes sense, as well as water. So you can hang around these water holes and pick off the food that you want. And from a photographic point of view, just to point out, this was taken by Garth Thompson. It's not one of my pictures or wilderness pictures, so just photo credit there. From a photographic point of view, it gives you ample opportunity to see the chase between predator and prey. And just touching on places like minor pools as well, where the walking is great, as well as in Hwange, the grass is a little bit shorter. So that's quite nice in terms of being able to access areas where you wouldn't be able to do a walking safari previously because the grass would be quite tall and obviously hiding predators and other dangers around. So that's another reason why the dry season is really nice in Zimbabwe. If we jump over to the Mana Pools region, as mentioned, all these camps are open during the dry season. In the rainy season, some of the camps do close. For example, Wilderness Safaris, the two concessions that we have on the west of the camp, west of Mana Pools, pardon me, and east of Mana Pools, they do close because they are it's black cotton soil, so they close when the rains come because one, guests might be able to go on the river, enjoy a river cruise, or do a walking safari, but you're not going to be able to drive very far, and 2, getting supplies in is quite tricky. So don't get me wrong, there are some camps that are actually open during the rainy season, but majority of camps and monopools will close during that season. All right, and just touching on what happens during the dry season, you get these huge open escarpments in monopools, which are beautiful, and that attracts the buffalo herds as well as the impala and zebra, and that onto the plains to eat. So as the river drops down, the green grass takes advantage of the nutrition and starts to push up, and you're getting these plains game on the open plains, excuse the pun. And you're as well getting all the amazing activities in terms of canoeing, boating, walking, safaris, as previously mentioned. And then the picture on the right is just courtesy of some of our friends at Matetsi here in Victoria Falls, showing that you can still see predators even at that time. Okay, so jumping on to the seasons, the summer rains. So we're going into the green season now. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this one. So people do get worried and they say, hey, I don't want to go to Africa. It's rainy season. We're going to be stuck in playing cards all the time. It's not going to be nice. Remember, we don't have monsoons like they have in other parts of the world. So our thunderstorms are usually in the late afternoon or the early mornings. I know it sounds silly because it's summer season and the temperatures drop because obviously with the water condensation and that and the cooling from the rains, it does make it a much nicer temperature to be around. So the rains will come, you might miss a little bit of time, but generally they're clear, you have the spectacular thunderstorms, and then you can go out on the activities. It's also great for tracking because it cleans the roads, and any animal that's walking past afterwards is going to be leaving a fresh set of footprints, which is really nice. So the other pros in the green season, besides the spectacular thunderstorms, is that birding is amazing. If anyone can quickly write down in the answer what that bird is on the right. Sally says she's going to give you a VIP first class ticket all the way to Africa for the next 2 years whenever you want to travel. Just joking, but yeah, that's a Moa falcon. So they come down and they breed all the way up in East Asia and some parts of Russia, and they fly all the way down. So that's just one example of the amazing birds that we do get in the area during the green season. You're also getting healthier, non-stressed animals. So as mentioned, those buffalo, when you can actually count their ribs, and they're a little bit stressed because of no food, and the lion and predators taking a particular to them. You're getting animals that have survived the dry season, and they're just a lot happier and bouncing around and eating and a lot fatter. Cooler temperatures we touched on. The amazing sunsets are there because you're getting cloud buildup, and obviously in the cloud you can get the refraction and the reflection of the sun as it sets. So it's beautiful getting those turquoises and teals that start to shine through. And then one of the coolest things I think at this time of the year is also a baby boom. So in particular places where the grass starts to grow in the open fields, you're starting to get the impala and the wildebeest net going, and I'll touch on that shortly as well with the map. And these animals are predisposed to breeding all at once because their babies do suffer from predators a lot. What happens is if you can all have your babies in one go, and you can have, say, 30 or 40 babies in one crèche, as they still call it, you are then reducing the risk of your baby being eaten if a predator comes into place. So a predator will run in, the babies will all run, try and get away. Maybe 1 or 2 won't get away, but the rest will be able to survive, live another day. That 24 hours goes a long way for them to grow stronger. How do they grow stronger? Also, their parents, by giving birth to them as the rainy season starts, they are then exposed to green grass. So mom can eat lots of green grass, and then her milk is a lot more nutritious, and then the baby can suckle from her and grow stronger, fatter, fitter, faster. So it's quite a nice thing to see, you getting a lot of baby boom happening. This also results in an abundant amount of game, not just because the numbers of impala and wildebeest and zebra have increased because they're having babies, but a lot of animals are concentrating onto these areas, and predators will still take homage to those areas where they can feed. A neat thing to think about is the availability. So we've got a lot of availability in Zimbabwe during our green season. It's not because it's a bad season, it's just because it's the time of year that there's not the best holidays to our main markets, which are the US, their summer, and the UK, their summer as well. So we're talking November once again through to April, where availability is easy. There's no fighting to get space or having to flip itineraries around. It's quite easy to do. And if you look at Zimbabwe and our cousins and neighbors next door, Botswana, 3 nights in Zim can generally equate to 1 night in Botswana in high season. So you're getting a lot more bang for your euro or your dollar or your pound, which is pretty neat. And all those listed reasons there why it is a good time to visit. So just to touch on some of the pictures over here, I'm going to talk about the Ngama grassland. The picture on the left, as you look at it, is the Ngama grassland, and the picture on the right is Linkwasha camp, where the predators are still coming through. Even though it's green season, there's still an abundance of game and predator and prey all coming through. And then the baby boom with little warthogs, the rest of them are hiding in the background. And then just a picture from our friends down at Matetsi with the green grasses there. So throughout Zimbabwe, you're getting this lush green, beautiful scenery in the background, which is also nice for photos because it does settle the dust, so you're getting a lot clearer view. So I just want to bring your attention to Ngama. So this is the map of Hwange once again, with all those blue water holes. And then in our concession to the southeast, those two circles there, about 52,000 hectares, there's a red circle that's going to pop up around Linkwasha camp. So I'm not trying to draw your attention to the word Linkwasha, but rather to that grey area in the middle. What these grey areas actually are old riverbed systems. So these used to be rivers that would flow. And if you look at this area around Linkwasha, it's an open pan. So that would have been a great source of maybe a little lake or a water pan, large water pan. As it dries up, obviously the nutrition is still there, but it turns into a sandy area. And then when the rains come, it turns into that green lush area that I just spent some time on, which means that the grasses start to push and the animals start to migrate. It's a flat open space. So not only is it great for animals to go and drop their young, they give birth, but it's also easy for them to keep a view out on predator and prey. All right, let's see if we can go into the next picture here. So just a picture of the Ngama, what it looks like that would have been taken around September, October time, when there's been no rain for a long time. So these sable would have been heading back from the waterhole, then going back into the thick woodland area to try and find some browsing. And then if you fast forward to just post the rainy season, you can see that all the sable have actually shrunk. No, I'm just kidding. Those are wildebeest there, but you're getting the picture in terms of the green grass that starts to sprout, so the animals can come and start to eat there. And then just to prove that I wasn't smoking my socks, there is a very baby wildebeest right over here who is feeding close to mom, and the giraffe coming through, which is quite nice. So those giraffe would have likely been drinking from the pan, because giraffe aren't going to lower their standards and eat from the ground. They're going to go look at some of the trees. So it's this vast open area where you're getting this kaleidoscope of all the different animals in a healthy format, all happy. They've survived the dry season, and now they've got food aplenty. So the only thing they really have to worry about is the predators coming and catching them. But if they hang around all together and use the sight of the giraffes and the warning sound of baboons, etc., and their own smell, they'll be able to get away from the predators, hopefully. And just some more pictures to show that carpet of green. Beautiful place to go and do sundowners, as well as walking safaris, because the grass hasn't got tall yet. You can take even kids there and stuff like that. Keep it safe. And a great place to just walk around and look at some of the smaller insects and that are also coming with the rainy season. And just showing the lion prides that also follow the prey. They start to head to that Ngamo area, as well as the other open areas to feed on the young, or just try their luck at some of the bigger herds. So it really is an abundant time for animals, for both predator and prey. And just a reminder, obviously I've spoken and touched very briefly on the two different seasons. So we've got the dry season where most people are going, and it's a bum fight for availability. And then you've got the green season where some people perceive that it's a negative, no one's going, we shouldn't go, the prices are cheaper, so it's not as good. Hopefully I've blown that out of the water there. But one thing to remember is that the constant is that the camps, the service, and the beauty of being in the bush does remain the same. So it's not like the service drops, it's not like the food level goes down, it's not like the people are less happy. That's all a constant. It just depends on what you are looking for. If you want more bang for your buck, as well as the time of year that you can get away from work, if that makes sense. And people always ask me, okay, Graham, that's great, you're in sales and stuff, but honestly, when is the best time for you to go? And there is no best time to go in the bush, because I believe any time that you spend in the bush is a great time to be in the bush, to be able to disconnect and reconnect with your loved ones around, or make new friends, or meet different people from different cultures. Go and visit a village in Zimbabwe, see how they're doing things in the dry or the green season, and just interact with the local people and the communities and culture that are around around you. So yeah, once again, you guys are the experts, so you know what your guest wants, but please never turn away from the green season thinking that it's a negative. We've had repeat guests that have come during the dry season for three times. They've come in their fourth time during the green season just to try something different, and it's actually converted them to push into the green season where there's less people, less traffic, and still a lot of fun around in the bush. So thank you. That's that from me for the moment. Hopefully there's some questions and answers, and I'll hand it over to Sally again to assist.
Thank you so much, Graham. Just for clarification, I won't be sponsoring any flights to Africa, but we will be taking some questions. So if anyone does have any questions and you missed this at the beginning, if you could just type them into the Q&A box on your screen, I will then field those to Graham and he can answer them for you. We've got a couple of thank yous coming in, but no questions just yet. Okay, I've got a question from Kirsten, which says, is it a specific good time for predators too? I'm assuming that means about the green season.
Yeah, indeed. So the first thing that's great about the green season is it's easier often to track predators, particularly. So basically what will happen is predators will start to use the roads a lot more during the green season if the grass is getting a little bit taller or thicker. If the bush is thicker, the branches are thicker, so they use the road. So when the rains come, it washes the road. So a guide traveling down a road can give a more accurate, have a more accurate idea of when that predator actually traversed. Whereas in the dry season, you're kind of looking at, was it windy today? Did it come in the morning? Did it come in the afternoon? Green season's quite easy that way. But also that the predators are still out and about. They, especially after the rain, they like to sun themselves. And predators have to eat throughout the year, obviously, to survive. So they will be heading to areas where the animals are, grazing, for example, like the Ngamo. It's a great place to see the predators in action.
Okay, thanks. A question from Caroline. What camps in Rukomeki concession closed during the rains? I might have pronounced that wrong.
No worries, it's Rukomeki. But I understood exactly what you said there. So yeah, the Rukomeki concession, they're both closed. So that's Little Rukomeki and Rukomeki. They're both closed because it's difficult to get supplies in, as well as that it's a black cotton soil, which is really nutritious. So it's great when you get that type of soil for those areas to thrive. However, the problem is that it'll just bog the vehicles down. So it's a guide and a camp manager's worst nightmare, where that black cotton soil just eats the vehicle. If any of you have read Peter Allison's books on on Botswana, whatever you do, don't run, he talks a lot about it and losing vehicles to the wrath of the black cotton soil.
Okay, one from Gara. Without Mana being an option in the rainy season, what makes a good circuit with Hwange?
So Gara, it's a great question, very interesting. Obviously, Vic Falls, we always think to add on there because that's an entry and exit point. It does get a little bit more limited, but you are able to still be able to head down to a place like Matopos, which is great. They're open all year round, and that's quite close to Hwange. Depending where you are, and Hwange can be a 2 to 2.5 hour transfer, so nothing too terrible. But the great thing about Hwange now is that there's a lot of investment in the whole of the national park. Historically, the park was doing really well for self-drive people, and there were some private lodges. Then self-drive fell away, and the private lodges were the only ones to go, particularly in the south and southeast, where you can find wilderness safaris, where you can find African bush camps. And now we're very pleased to say that some of the other safari operators have opened up in the park as well. So you're looking at Vernie's camp as well. And then further north, you've got Camp Hwange, among other places like Robbins Camp and Cinematella, which have just recently been redone. And Machaba are opening up Deka and Datima, I believe, very soon as well. So the nice thing is the northern part of Hwange and the southern part of Hwange and the central part of Hwange are all very different. From the center to the north, you're getting a bit more of a rocky outcrop where they focus on walking safaris particularly, and some of the highest densities of lion concentration are found up there. And then to the south, not saying that there aren't lions, there's still numerous prides around in different concessions. You're getting a totally more open, flat area like that Ngama Plains that we discussed. So you're finding you can actually spend a whole week, if not 10 days, in Hwange National Park now by combining the northern part of Hwange, central part of Hwange, and the southern part of Hwange, and getting a totally different offering at each of those areas.
Okay, so that following on from that question, there was one asking what's the best itinerary for 9 days covering only Zimbabwe? Was it better to add Botswana?
Okay, so that's from Manish. Look, I love Botswana, I love Zimbabwe, I love Zambia, I love everywhere. So it totally depends. Some nationalities want to travel, they want to get the most out of it. If you're doing 9 days, you can do, I would say, 2 countries, but I wouldn't throw a third on there. So if you're doing 9 days in open season, I would focus only on Vic Falls, Hwange, and Mana Pools. If you've got extra time, then you can start to add on the Eastern Highlands, for example, or as well as the Matopos area. And then if you've got even a bit more time and you can zoom out of South Africa, you can also head down to Gonarozo where Chilo Gorges, Singita Kamshana, and those other properties which are stunning as well.
Okay, one from Malcolm says, in June, Hwange can get below 0 at night, so that's obviously very cold in the tented camps. What do wilderness safaris offer guests for warmth?
Malcolm, it's mostly our smiles. We smile, and then everyone's warm. No, sorry, I've got to throw a joke in every now and again. Okay, so Malcolm, great question. So there's a few things we do. Obviously, and I'll just touch on the normal, and then I'll touch on some of our more elite camps. So the normal things we do is we offer on the vehicles. We offer, because that's where guests will spend a lot of time, you're offering blankets and thick ponchos, which act as a windbreak, and obviously the blanket as a warmth. And we offer hot water bottles as well on the vehicles, just for the guests to hold under the blankets on their laps. In the camps itself, some of the camps have got, all the camps have got fireplaces outside, so that's where most people will flock to. We put thicker and heavier duvets in the tents, as well as the hot water bottles. We also drop down the flaps at night to maintain it, although some guests do ask for the front flap to be kept open so they can see out. Obviously, with no chance of rain coming, they're getting, if it's full moon or even just at night, their eyes adjust and they're getting the beautiful scenery out there, and they've come all that way to see it. And then if you take a camp like Linkwasha, for example, so that's the one camp where we've added a few more things to keep the guests warm. So firstly, in the main area as well as the dining area, we've got fires that we use, so we can put logs on the fire to keep those internal areas warm. We offer everything, the blankets that, as I mentioned before, but also in the rooms, we've got electric blankets in the bed, so you can turn those on before going to bed, and by the time you get to bed, it's nice and toasty. And then in the rooms itself, we've got I'm not going to call it an air conditioner or a heater, but it is a standing unit that can bring the temperature up to about 16, 17 in winter, so bringing it up to a bit nicer, and in summer can drop it down a little bit as well. So yeah, those are the things we do. Linkwasha is probably the best suited if you've got guests that are really worried about the cold, but otherwise it's just keeping guests warm with hot water bottles, blankets, and fires.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions from Geraldine and Karen, who are both asking about flight transfers during the rainy season, or whether it's better to go by road.
Okay, so if you're looking at road transfers into Hwange, if you're going to northern Hwange, it's not none of them are terrible drives, but for example, you are going to spend about 2 hours from the airport in. If you're heading to the southeast of Hwange and your guests are coming off, say, an SAA flight or the British Airways, the internal Southern African flight, they're only landing and getting out of the airport about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So it doesn't actually give you enough time to drive all the way down into the south of Hwange. So flights are the main option. Also, you're looking at sometimes a drive of anything between 2 to 6 hours, depending where you're going in Hwange, and otherwise you're looking at a flight of saying 20 to 45 minutes, depending if you're going to the north or to the south. So I always recommend flying, because if you actually take into account the cost of the flight, versus the cost of the transfer. Obviously, transfers are a little bit cheaper, but then you look at how much time you're spending on the road and not actually in the bush. Even though you do have a large portion of that transfer will be a game drive, it's still do a little Venn diagram, and it's actually more beneficial for your guests to pay the extra $60 to fly in. But that does bring us to the next question, saying, what about rainstorms? So we always have plan B in terms of rainstorms. So sometimes you might have to actually forego the flight, obviously for safety and use the vehicles. But it's quite rare. I would say if you've got 100 departures, maybe there's 2 or 3 in the rainy season that are actually affected, because our flying time is between that window of when the storms actually really start to build up, which is late afternoon and early morning.
Thanks, Graham. We've got a question from Anne. What are the biggest differences between Hwange and Mana pools in terms of game viewing?
Okay, so in terms of predator and prey, and you are getting the same predators and prey, generally speaking. Although in Mana you're not going to get giraffes. There's no giraffes found in Mana, and rhino are found in neither or. There are a small pocket of rhino in Hwange, but they go unseen for months, if not years on end. They're highly protected in the furthest reaches. What you've got to think about is the difference between the terrain. So northern Hwange is quite rocky with open water areas and small dams and rivers, and then southern Hwange is very open in terms of vast plains and pans of water. Mana pools has obviously got the river, so it's a different vegetation that you're looking at. So you'll be seeing animals in different areas, and the feel is totally different. You'll be driving along a river, for example, and spotting the animals coming out to drink in the afternoon, or you'll be driving inland watching the animals coming out from the river that have drank in the morning. So in terms of game viewing, you might get a slightly more concentration of predators throughout the season in Mana pools. Mana pools is also, because of the forest is a bit thick, and that is more known for its leopards, although you do get leopard in Hwange. But if you said to me, hey Graham, we're going to jump in a plane and go and find a leopard, I'd direct the pilot to Mana pools and not to Hwange. But in terms of all the other animals, generally speaking, it's the same amount, just different feel.
Thanks, Graham. A question from Linda, and then there's one from Anchor, which I'm going to put together. One is asking, do you have pepper ticks in Zimbabwe? And then what the situation is with mosquitoes, especially in the rainy season.
In the rainy season, okay. So yeah, we do get all different types of glorious and wonderful ticks in Zimbabwe. As much as people hate ticks and mosquitoes, they are a necessary source for the environment. So in terms of ticks, yes, it is. Generally in camps, they're not around, because obviously the camps are there's sandy paths or raised paths, so the guests aren't walking in particular through the thick bush. But when you do go on a walking safari, obviously it is always good to just check yourself for ticks. And it's, when people do have ticks, it's maybe they've forgotten to check. They've gone running through a field at home or something, or they've gone on a walk and they're so excited they don't check. So generally, basically in the shower afterwards, hot water, just check yourself through, and all is well. Touch wood, I've never been bitten or fallen foul to a tick, and I walk through the bush all the time. In terms of mosquitoes in the rainy season, so all bugs obviously increase in the rainy season, but they are a necessity to what we have around us. If you take away the butterflies and the bees example, you're not going to have the elephants and lions eventually down the cycle. So mosquitoes, all our camps have got mosquito nets. We do have the Peaceful Sleep spray around, and yeah, to be 100% honest, mosquitoes can increase. It just depends if they like you or not. I don't really get bitten, so I'm more fortunate that way. But we get guests that are the fairest of skin, coming from the most city slickers in the world, and they often don't notice it. We do spray around our camps every year with non-chemical. It's more of a homeopathic, not a chemical, so it doesn't affect the environment, and that does help keep the mosquitoes away. People might ask about malaria, so I'll just jump onto that. Zimbabwe is a malarial area, like most of Africa. If you go to your doctor, he's going to give you all wonderful pills and things to take. But generally speaking, none of our staff have contracted malaria in the camps. I don't know anyone who's contracted malaria in Victoria Falls. So malaria is quite tricky. I mean, we could do another webinar on that, but it's only a certain type of mosquito that bites you, which has been wiped out in many places. It's also only the female mosquito of that species that bites you. And you have to be bitten a certain number of times, or be the person who's been bitten approximately 7th time for the disease to actually formulate and affect you. So I've been in Zimbabwe for 5 years, and 4 years before that in Botswana. I don't take any medicines. I don't spray because I don't like the stuff. And touch wood, I haven't contracted malaria yet. So yeah, nothing to worry about in terms of mosquitoes. Happy days sleeping under a mosquito net at night and adding a little fan.
Okay, there's just a few more questions, and then I think we'll finish this off. If anyone does have any more at the end, they can email them to Graham. So one from Caroline: do you roughly know how much of a discount and percentage guests receive during the shoulder season in November?
So you got to be clever with this one. You got to look at it, because a lot of people they'll maybe do a stay pay offer, if that makes sense. So stay 6, pay 5. Which obviously drops it by that percentage. But other companies like Wilderness Safaris, we don't want to keep bombing the market with all these specials, because you get so many. So what we have done is we looked at what the market was selling us in terms of rate, we dropped it, and then we maintain that. So generally from our side of it, it can be up to 30% in some camps cheaper in the shoulder seasons and the lower seasons. So between 20 to 30% from our side. Easily in Zimbabwe comparative camps. And yeah, I task you to go and look at a camp like Davidson's and see what it is in peak season and low season, and a camp like Linkwasha. Obviously, the more expensive camps are in high season, the more of a discount you are getting in terms of actual dollars in the low season.
Okay, and then from Kirsten: is there a green season package for Hwange and Vic Falls in November on offer for 4 to 6 nights?
Kirsten, I've got I hate packages, because we create all these packages and it's quite a lot of man hours and women hours and that. And then we send it out and someone's like, no, well, we actually don't want 3 nights. They want 2 nights as change. So we're happy to do packages and create. If you say, listen, we got guests that like to do 2 nights Vic Falls and 4 nights in the bush, we're really happy to make those circuits up for you. That include all transfers and even third party and stuff like that. So that's not a problem. But in terms of us specifically offering that package, not really, because we basically say, you want to go to Hwange, what's your budget? Choose the camps. You want to go to Vic Falls, what's your budget? We choose the camps for you out there. But we can easily create that for you.
Thanks, Graham. And then just a couple more questions from Manish, which is just on costing. So the price difference between Botswana and Zim, which is more attractive in terms of game viewing, and why the lodges in Mana Pools are slightly more expensive.
Okay, no worries. So I'll answer why Botswana is more expensive than Zim. In terms of bed nights, so actual beds, there's less. The Botswana government cottoned onto something saying, let's have fewer people travel and obviously just push the price up. So the demand has increased. Botswana historically has been seen as the go-to place for game viewing. Obviously, Okavango Delta in particular is the more expensive than the other areas like Chobe. And the reason for that is it's unique. It's a special place. But if you think about where the Okavango Delta is and where Hwange National Park is, they're actually almost on the same line. They're just about 250 kilometers separated. So it's a similar fauna and flora that are around, but the Okavango Delta has got its own uniqueness in terms of water coming down. And maybe Manish, just chat to me. We can chat on the geographics of that as well. But the government were the ones that kind of set the rate going high by saying, hey, let's have less people, create more of a demand. And obviously with more of a demand, the price does go up. Why are the lodges in Mana Pools so expensive? Exactly the same thing. So we isolate Zimbabwe and we say, how many lodges do we have in Hwange? Hwange is much bigger. So you can have, let's say 15 lodges, and each lodge has got 10 beds, 150 beds. You go to Mana Pools, in terms of that same quality, you've probably only got 4 or 5 lodges. So once again, demand is pushing the price up. Although in saying that as well, there is always an allure by man towards the river. So people are going to spend more because they are on the Zambezi River. You're getting canoeing, you're getting boating, you're getting fishing. So it is a little bit of an add-on compared to what you can get in Hwange. Whatever you can get in Hwange, you can get in Mana Pools in terms of activities, plus the boating, plus the fishing, the sundowners, etc. So I hope that answers that question in a small nutshell.
Thanks so much, Graham. If anybody has any more questions after this, I'm going to include Graham's email address on the recording, which is sent out to all of you later this afternoon or tomorrow. So you can feel free to contact him directly. Graham, I hope that's okay.
100%.
Perfect. Otherwise, thank you all so much for attending. And Graham, thanks so much for a fantastic webinar.
Thanks, Sally, and thanks, Atta, for putting this on for us, so we can get to everyone's living rooms and offices. And yeah, look forward to chatting to everyone. And again, and please send me a mail if you've got any questions. And thanks very much, Atta.
Perfect. Thank you.